So we're just going to now continue with the report back from the remaining groups, and then when we have finished that, we're going to look at those recommendations and see what we want to say about them, and we're going to give people an opportunity to speak who might not have had an opportunity. The groups, as far as I can see, have done absolutely brilliantly. Thank you to all the people who ran those. Let me apologise again, because there are some new people in the room. We made up people's names in the night and put their names next to things. Esther, I apologise to you. I knew you wouldn't be here this morning, but at 11:10 last night I wrote your name in to run a group. Oh, so, but what was fabulous is people have just, stepped up and ran those, so I really appreciate you doing that. Okay, so we've got group 3. There you go. How do we build political power through alliances and connecting with other sectors, thinking outside the box? And could groups 4 and 5 come and get ready so that we can go straight on when this group's finished?
Do we need to ask if they don't want anything tweeted?
Oh, yeah, we do. Sorry. Just get all the information. So, learn as we go, not only about how to use online, but how to use social media. So, can a group say if you don't want things tweeted at the beginning? Because back and forward. So, the decision from before about the NIACA stuff is that will all be consulted with the First Peoples steering group for this project, this gathering, and words will be agreed that will go out. Anything other than about NIACA is fine. As Uncle Bob says, they want everybody to know. So it's just the politics of managing what is a very big project for them. But anybody else, if you don't want something, just mention it, but it's better if you mention it before, because it's difficult when it's already been done. Okay, thank you.
Okay, don't dare tweet away. Can we scroll up so we can see the framing of the session? I don't have it written down here. So the question was around how we build political power through alliances and connecting with other sectors, including around climate change, education, unions, children and families. To start off with, throughout the conversation, we thought we would add health and tech at the very least to that list, but there are a whole range of other sectors and connections that are yet to be mapped out. We also had, we touched on thinking about political power, but also framing power, framing the conversation in terms of influence as well, and that was a key theme for us. So our first recommendation is that other allied sectors are positioned within the Arts Front movement and organisation ourselves, and thinking about who those key advocates could be and how we can invite them in to start to foster some reciprocal and mutually beneficial relationships. Our second recommendation...
Sorry, I'm struggling now. It says the first recommendation says take down patriarchy.
They're not in the same... They're in the opposite order.
Okay, so we need to start at the bottom. There we go. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Representation of allied is starting at the bottom. Representation of allied non-arts advocates on committees, working boards of Arts Front. Is that?
That's correct.
Perfect. Yep.
Our next recommendation, so there's sort of little notes in between the recommendations online, just from capturing some of the other conversation. But the next recommendation was that the Arts Front becomes a centralised space for this evidence base that we all keep talking about the benefit and impact of the arts on these other sectors. And there has been a number of people that have mentioned the fact that we actually have a lot of research, we have a lot of measurement of the impacts that we make, but potentially we don't know where to find them, or they're very decentralised at the moment. So perhaps there would be a way of us bringing them together. We talked about speaking in non-arts contexts. So that's us going out and speaking in health contexts, in education contexts, using the evidence and sharing it in broader circles so we can build those advocates from other fields. Our recommendation is to create a speaker bureau, which would be a listing of individuals who have public speaking skills and knowledge in these specific areas. Our next recommendation is to understand some key non-arts networks and participate in them. Important and, influential non-arts networks. So the thing that came up in the conversation was also this idea of we know that we can have an impact in lots of different sectors, but we also have things to learn. So reciprocity and mutual benefit is going to be key to building meaningful relationships outside of our sector. Our next recommendation is to map the influence that already exists in this room, particularly the influence, the board memberships, networks, associations that exist in non-arts contexts that we already have, and look at the circles of influence that already exist. And there are a number of organisations. MEAA was one that came up. Also, a number of educational and curriculum setting organisations that came up as lists of people to talk to. But we don't have that was getting quite into the detail. The final recommendation that we had was to take down the patriarchy. And I'll leave it there. That's you, Esther. Yeah.
Okay, so when we come back to accept these recommendations, they can only be accepted if it's got somebody's name next to it, or we're going to end up with this long list of things that everybody wants done by somebody else. So, that's the whole room. It doesn't just need to be people from that room, but there's no point us having endorsing a recommendation that's... Sorry. Okay. Yes. Would the only person with a phone please go outside? Okay, so all I'm saying is there's no point us accepting a recommendation that says create a speakers bureau if there's no one prepared to take responsibility for pushing the idea along, because we're going to end up with a wish list of things that we're waiting for somebody else to do.
Make a point.
Yep.
Our group is still confused about the long-term Arts Front project and what they're actually funded to do.
Okay.
So I think we need that context.
So they're funded to get groups of people together. They're funded to do three things: create a vision, help people to do collaborative projects and work together by putting them in touch with each other, and help the sector to communicate. So it's not Feral's job to pick up the things that are here. Their job's to keep getting people into the conversation, to keep developing the vision, to keep this, online conversation going. They're not the managers of a whole range of projects that we want done. Go on.
I just wonder at this stage then, things like centralisation of information, things like that, then what we're probably pointing out, I don't think anyone in this room can actually do it. So I still think there might be some recommendations that we might need to keep working on over time to understand how best to facilitate them.
Yes, I accept that. It would still need to have someone's name so that that person is keeping that conversation going. You don't have to say, I will set up a speakers bureau. You have to say, I'll take responsibility for trying to move that topic forward. You know, which means trying to negotiate with somebody or keeping it on the agenda.
Is that something that you want us to do now?
No, sorry, and I'm not saying that just that group needs to do it. I'm saying when
That's
we
okay.
come back to accept these recommendations, they need to be recommendations that's got somebody's name by them.
Okay.
Okay? And I mean, if you want to complain about what I'm saying, do it now. I hope I'm trying to convey to you why I'm saying that. The long wish list of things we hope will happen wears everybody down and creates a sense of failure. The list of things where people say, and you might say, let me use the Speakers Bureau because that's quite a hard one. You might say, I'll take responsibility for that topic and you've got no space in the next 6 months to do it. It's okay. But if you're thinking about it and thinking about how that might work, if you take the one about there being a central database for the research and that sort of information, if I put my hand up and said I'd take that, I would go straight to Ferrell's and say, what's your best advice about how to get this done? Because they're masters at the topic about how you set those kinds of things up. They might say, we could do that. You know, like that's something that's within our... Or they might say, let's put in a grant application to get a bit of money so that we can do it. We have to think about how we're going to make things happen. They don't all have to happen tomorrow. They just need to be sponsored. So that's really, you know, will you be the sponsor for something? And also, if there's no one who wants to be the sponsor, that's okay as well. We'll keep it on the list. And someone down the track might go, I know exactly how to do that. You know, give it to me. So it's not that it goes away, it's that there's not an implementation committee who's funded to carry out all the things that you would like to have done. Okay? Righto. Thank you. That's lovely. Let's go. Next group.
Just a practicality on that, some feedback from our session. It would be helpful if we could actually either edit or click or go on to those recommendations, because we didn't know that in advance. So we now need to go back over those.
Sure.
And allocate. So perhaps that's a structural thing on the website. Thank you.
Scotia?
No, she said yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, no worries. Righto, next group. 4. Protocols. Do we want to have protocols and what might they look like and how are we going to get there to get them where people agree to use the protocols as part of what they do?
So clearly, in the last 5 minutes, you can tell that even in this group, diversity is very diverse. And we all have different levels of how we understand things, how long we need, how long we take, what language we use. So, which is a really great segue into our working group. So language is important. Getting the right language. I have a moral responsibility to relay something from Veronica. The phrase is people with disabilities, or disabled people. But if you don't know the right language or you're unsure, ask the right people from the right communities. Also around language, how do we look for simple, accessible, and an appropriate language? Even the word protocol is very structured in a world. And how do we use positive, affirming language that unites and strengthens? So to start, we're going to not use the word protocol. In this in this working group, we've decided that we'll base this discussion around values, around asking why. So, what is the objective of the assumed protocols? Is to find better ways to work. What are the ways we want to work? So, based on that, we have established a few things. So, firstly, rules don't work. We clearly know that from a lot of examples in our lives. So rules don't work in all contexts. And so if they don't work, then ask questions. Always ask questions and keep asking the questions. Some questions, especially in working with people, diverse people, could be, what stories haven't you heard? What stories need to be heard? What kind of relationship would you like to have with me, and how would you like that to pan out? What way of working works for you? Some other questions. Is this place safe? Who are we creating this space for? And is it safe for the people that we're intending it for? What do they need? Those are the kind of questions you can begin to ask. We also had the privilege of having Rita, Tristan, and Hannah in the group with us, and so it's a really good reminder to also, as a guiding value, that we all actually understand that art is embedded in culture, and that as the starting point of all conversation in the arts. Now. So in asking questions to the people who you work with, and asking yourself some of these questions when working with diverse people and communities. What do they care about? What do you care about? The next point is, to focus on what matters. What actually matters in this space between us. So I think it's very, very important to remember that there is diversity even in diverse communities, and so how do we acknowledge each other as their own person, along with their complexities and nuances, and the complexities and nuances of the community then that they are part of, and honor that. Next point is to stay current in the changing times and the changing circumstances in communities. So, we have seen shifting environments and circumstances and behaviors between communities, between diverse communities. And so how do we keep relevant? How do we stay current and on top of things? And so how do we educate ourselves? How do we listen deeply? How do we ask the questions and keep asking questions? And lastly, as a bit of a call to action, we problematize the phrase check your privilege a little bit, and we recognize that it is a tricky concept, and no one really knows how to do it. We sort of know what it means, we sort of know what we'd like to see, but it's very hard to say how. So we could try this. For everybody in a leadership position, especially, and that's, to ask this question to another person of a different ethnic background, or a different, or somebody with disability, or a woman, to ask them, hey, do you want my job? And explore if you could actually relinquish that power. And we could have some follow-up conversations around that. But yeah, that's us. Thank you.
Righto, group 5.
Hi, the rest of Group 5, do you want to come up and join us?
Just while we're waiting for Group 5, a little note that was left over from the previous session
is that Alex Kelly has agreed to take responsibility for overthrowing the patriarchy.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with that.
Must have been
Can we turn the air
anticipating hot
conditioning
air.
off?
Okay, let's go. 5 minutes.
Okay, just noting that Elliot is live tweeting from the side of the stage as well as being up here and joining us. We looked at comm strategies and, you know, like ingoing as well as outgoing, and jammed out a whole bunch of different ideas and came up with a few recommendations. One is that Arts Front is a co-produced idea that's been created by a group and that invites contributions. Another is that Arts Front recognises that there are a range of ways to participate and actively seeks to create spaces for both analogue and digital channels of participation. And when we talk about analogue channels, we're talking about, print or postcards or things that are offline. So, like acknowledging that there's a digital space and a in real life space. Arts Front supports, not replicates. We actively seek to partner and resource independent and community-based media with a priority on First Nations and culturally diverse media. We've got the word cowed up there, I just can't edit. And so if there's some murky language in this, I apologise. It just doesn't have an edit function on the website. So I'm moving around, hang on, different things. We acknowledge that language is a huge diversity of languages and that they are spoken and embodied. I think that's the full summary of our recommendations. We talked about stuff like, do we get that we could have, there isn't a need for a single brand to share content. There is a need for a single brand to share content. The arts orgs can't share everything. The tension between branded messages and the diverse number of voices. The need for, that ingoing and outgoing responses. There was some really specific stuff around radio and use of radio as a methodology, and particularly Aboriginal and ethnic radio or First Nations radio. I think... and there was also an idea that came up about having people volunteering to be multilingual social media representatives, and people creating a base of people who might be interested in working messaging in multiple languages. Is that it?
The infiltrating the mainstream media.
Yeah, and when we talk about that we seek to support and not replicate, it's this idea that there's a whole lot of great independent and community media that exists out there, and that it would be really useful to kind of resource that rather than reinventing the wheel and creating another round of kind of specific things, that we would always look to sort of support the existing media rather than other media. And that it can be two-way, media can be two-way, and I think that community media really shows that. Is that all?
The channels are not only digital.
Yes, yeah, the digital and the analogue, that it needs to be in real life because not everyone's online. And Elliot's going to take responsibility for all of this because he's clearly so capable. But he'd really love a wraparound of different people to support him as well.
Excellent. Group 6, campaigns.
Hi everyone. Bong and I facilitated this group. I don't know whose brilliant idea it was to put an anarchist and a communist in facilitating a democratic process, but
no pasaran.
we worked hard to overturn our natural instincts, and we did manage to get a good conversation thanks to Eleanor and Caroline as well. Can we see our recommendations? Because I can't remember them. So maybe starting from the bottom. Do you want to start with that one, Bong?
No.
Okay, so we talked about the fact that that we really need to understand and define what we mean by campaign and the difference between a campaign, an idea, a proposition, a project. And we did work as a group to try and come up with a definition, but of course, really interested in working on that definition. But, you know, the definition that we came up with in our discussion was a set of targeted, joined up and sequenced activities aimed at creating change within and beyond our spheres of influence.
The other one is a bunch of people doing a bunch of things to make a bunch of changes.
You may choose. Our second recommendation is the development of a platform or a mechanism that enables the arts sector to propose campaigns, that builds skills and capacity in campaigning, that interrogates the coherence of campaigns and the support for campaigns, that links them to potential supporters, enables global and local action, embeds cultural and inclusive ways of working, identifies resources, encourages cross-sectoral collaboration, and is democratic and participatory. And we even know who's going to do it.
That's number 3, is build on existing resources such as Play Stories, which is a Farrell's project, and ZAP. So actually John Smithies is in charge of doing this, of Cultural Development Network. ZAPS is a program being developed by CDN and my organization for local government, but also for other sectors, to find out what each organization is doing, so sharing information, storing stories, and using an online platform to collaborate, really. So rather than reinvent the wheel, we'll build on what's there. And I think many of you know about Play Stories anyway, and these things can talk to each other. So if you have other tools you want integrated into this, talk to me or to John or to Veronica.
That's it.
Whatever we're up to, 7. Thank you.
Hi. So we were discussing how can we agree on and run a public awareness campaign on the public value of the arts. And we spent most of our time just sort of generating questions to, I guess, engage with this issue. And so the topic has kind of 3 sections. The first is like, how can we agree on, which is, I guess, one of the trickier ones. And we were kind of, we expected that some of the other groups that were dealing with communication could have some awesome ideas as well. So some of the questions that we raised in response to how can we agree on were things like, you know, who is speaking? Who are these people speaking to, and what we're trying to say. And we identified some of the strengths and problems. The strengths is that we've got, you know, enormous diversity within the arts and who are participating in the arts in different sectors. And I guess the problem is, you know, the issue of representation. Suggestions was, like, I think it's an online platform called the Citizenship Democracy something. What was it? No, anyway, something.
I don't know what it's called, but it's an online.
Yes, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's an online participatory citizens democracy platform using online systems. Open democracy is pretty a good term for it, I reckon. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're hoping like a system like that could facilitate like many people sort of contributing, but we have like, you know, a leader and like participating in a number of different topics and forums and issues, but we have like maybe a small group or maybe even just one or a few leaders, and who have like the skills, resources, time, and willingness to be leaders. And we're hoping that a platform like this would enable like transparency and accountability and like abundant and clear communication from like the people to the leaders for accountability and all that, but also to sort of avoid some of the problems which come with like having celebrity spokespeople and, you know, some of the issues with sort of, I guess, career activists and stuff like that. So hoping for a more democratic sort of way of organising and having leadership. So to address the second component of the topic, which is how do we run a public awareness campaign on the public value of the arts, yeah, we had some questions which were things like, you know, what is the timing of this? What are our medium and long-term objectives? And, and there was one more that I can't remember. Oh yeah, and like, you know, what is the public value of the arts? So what we sort of, our notes are a bit of a mess, hey. Yeah. So we kind of thought our campaign could have two kind of objectives. One is to, I guess, you know, make people aware of the public value of the arts, and by that, it's things like community building, social, cultural, and political change, the role of the arts in, you know, exploring and promoting new ideas, and, you know, connecting people with cultural heritage, preserving cultural heritage, health, well-being, like, I don't need to, you know, tell you people. But yeah, so to have a campaign that's about that, you know, and the hopes of all this is that this will lead to sort of change within the arts industry and have positive change for artists and the arts industry and for the people who enjoy art. And we're hoping that this campaign could also lead to people advocating for the art, so having like an activist component as well, and with the idea of encouraging people to go from being consumers of the arts to advocates of the arts. And I think that's a cool idea in itself, but just on reflection just now, like random brain fart, excuse me, but like this idea of arts being something that is produced and consumed is very much a Western construct, and perhaps we can find more value in the arts if we shift away from this way of valuing the arts, this way of consuming the arts and engaging with the arts. If we explore different avenues of being artists and creating more value in the arts through this decolonising artistic practice. Yeah, that is basically what we discussed. Thank you.
Group 8. 8, 9, 10, get ready.
Can we scroll down, because we didn't take note, well we did, but we put them on there. So our group was working group number 8. And how do we connect with and bring together artists who are working in ways that inform our future and bring their work into public something, because I didn't see the last bit of that question. It's all right, Scotia's fine. So, public dialogue, that's the word. So we just had 3 key points at the top. So, Scotia, perhaps if you go down to the third key point, that's fine. Yep, beautiful. So the stuff below that's just sort of notes from bits of the conversation. So that sort of fed into these. We talked a little bit about how artists currently connect at the moment and their links to organisations, their links to each other, and sometimes that's really hard and sometimes it's not. But also, I think a key theme of our conversation was around putting artists at the centre of a lot more of the stuff we do, particularly that we come together in these sorts of gatherings lots of talking, bit of bureaucracy that fits around that, even in sort of sessions like this where it is about engaging everyone. But how do we put artists at sort of front and centre of that? And that they're very good in, you know, communicating things in different ways. And so far we've just relied on language and a fairly traditional way of communicating. Perhaps some artists might have done that a little bit differently. So our key points, we haven't called them recommendations because it's key points. So a linking and gathering of artists coming together to make art that influences discussions about how we communicate and inform the public dialogue, and this needs to be an authentic exchange. And everyone in the group sort of agreed on the wording of these. Do you want to talk about the next one?
Sure. The next one we have is develop models of intergenerational and diverse engagement of the arts. So there's so much wealth of knowledge in this room, in the world. How do we connect it all together, and how do we not be so lonely in our practice?
And some of that too, I think, is about the idea, as I think the last person that was up here talked about, that sort of idea of art as a product or a commodity being quite a Western idea. And that's for some people that it is intrinsic to their life, their everyday life. It's not about, you know, being a professional artist and getting a job, it's just who they are and what they are. So there's a bit of that, I think, wrapped into that one and how we do that. And the last one is about reimagining, a reimagining of how peak bodies work in relation to individual artists and putting them at the centre of the work that they can do. Realising the power of artists in creating something new that is action-based. Is Arts Front a best practice model for this that can lead to a rethink which is led by artists as well?
I'll just touch on that. So the last part of that is kind of saying we have an opportunity with Arts Front to be a model and to kind of try out these things so that we can say, well, we did it with this and this is how it worked, because a lot of organisations might say too hard or can't do it or something. So we need to be the leaders.
And I guess too, just in terms of the conversation that we started with in our group was around how artists currently connect with each other, and that peaks certainly were, or a connection to an organisation, that quite often peaks are the sort of central point for networking and development of artists. So that's sort of why that's sort of why that's in there. Some peaks do a fantastic job of that already, but again, I guess it's just time to check yourself occasionally, I think, is probably what the point we're trying to make. Cool.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Group 9.
Salam walaikum. Walaikum salam. Which one? Okay, so we at the last minute decided to become infrastructure. And we started off by looking at dividing into soft and hard infrastructures. And I guess the recommendations we have kind of relate to what the first group talked about, getting artists more into other non-art sectors and a kind of representation or an advocacy role, and getting artists' hands dirty in those things. So hard infrastructure was obviously housing. Like, this is all the structure that supports artists to do their practice. Housing, workspaces like studios and rehearsal spaces, front of house presentation spaces, galleries, venues, art schools, education institutions. Then in soft infrastructure, that's all our networks within sector and across sectors, social capital, our education training and professional pathways, people. Then we kind of drilled into what our original topic was, which was finance, and we looked at just the different kinds of financial support, the forms that it takes, from government funding to earned income to private support, private sector, philanthropy. Can you scroll down, Scotia? So on that, do you want to... So that's kind of talking within the existing framework, but I guess a key point was the new economy, or looking at ways of changing or shifting the dialogue and discussion around what the economy could also look like, and connecting with the existing movements on new economy. Yep.
I just wanted to add that I thought our group was shit hot.
because we actually had a really nice diversity in terms of the positions that people had. Like we had someone who from academia, we had someone from AMPAG, we also had indie artists, people coming at it from like a social entrepreneurship background. So thanks Arts Front for bringing us all together. I was very excited by that. Yeah.
And also that we had not enough time, I don't think anyone had enough time to come up with recommendations, and it did feel like a little bit tokenistic, but we went with it. But I think it's important to say that, yes, these recommendations have come out of a very rushed conversation. So the first recommendation is that the working group continue to discuss ideas raised and what models financial modelling could be adopted within the new economic framework. And specifically that means, and I guess I'm putting my name on that one, to bring artists into the discussion and involvement with the emerging new economy movement, and what capacity building is needed to support this exploration. Yep. Do you want to do recommendation 2, Rani?
Yes. So we float around the idea that peak bodies will work together to develop 2 to 3 key messages and submit to the Senate inquiry on innovation and creativity, which is open right now, and due 13th of January. Is Julianne still around if you want to talk to? Did you want to talk to that one? About, was it a Beth one? Okay.
Yep.
What we want to do is feed into that, because it was actually exactly what we were talking about, how the arts is being left out of some really key conversations.
And sorry. Incoming.
Sorry, just to affirm, we talked about the strength of having multiple submissions, that while we'll have 2 or 3 shared themes, then others add other arguments, so we don't look like we're just sending a form letter. But that
other sectors as well.
Yeah, so it's not to be exclusive to peak bodies. There could be other groups here that form and want to do something.
Yep. And then finally, recommendation 3. So this came in at the end. This is just another example on how we didn't exhaust the number of options for where artists could spread their influence. But in the City of Sydney, there is a 100 Resilient Cities initiative, and at the moment, that's a tender won by City of Sydney. It's pretty much being run by engineers and scientists. They don't have any artists or cultural workers involved in that, and we think that's pretty important to be involved with. Great. That's it.
Thank you.
Great.
10. Bill, where are you? Good man.
At the start of this, Tristan, bless him, goes, mate, run around every group and get them to look at the context of their conversation. I'm sorry, I'm not that brave. For me, as you can tell, as a bit of a theme of mine, context is really important, because if you don't frame a context or identify a context, then you have a context by default. And that context by default is sometimes called an agenda. So much better to create a context that empowers the conversation that you're trying to have. And it's not up to me to kind of provide an answer for this, really. Because it is like number 4 and a lot of the other presentations that we've had, it's about questions. And it is it's asking those questions, like what frame gives Art Front? What frame should we be looking through that gives Art Front? What are we recognise as not working? Is it colonisation? Is it privilege? Is it power? But more importantly, what empowers a new conversation? And that's probably the most important conversation. And some of those potential answers is inclusion what empowers this conversation? Is it decolonisation that empowers this conversation? Or is it a new definition of arts practice that would empower the conversation? Or, from where I've been sitting for the last 3 days and just really looking at the entire conversation, is our foundation or our frame actually equity? And is it equity in every sense? Equity in funding, equity in practice, equity in inclusion, equity in First Nations people, all of it, equity of power, equity of practice. Question?
And 12, either come.
So we're looking at power and privilege. So we're starting with, if you are here to help me, then you're wasting your time. If you are here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let's work together. So as a starting premise, so it's from First People activists, very strong understanding of our solidarity and how we can start to approach this conversation. So if we can move up a bit to the next few points. It's the responsibility of the privileged to question, disrupt and reframe power and privilege. So it's a personal responsibility of each of us to question our privilege and oppressive behaviours.
The idea behind that was that we don't just outsource that work to the already brutalized and targeted people, but to build transparency, accountability and mindfulness in our work. And with that we mean really to develop a new language, a new negotiation practice that we are going beyond the spin. Because we all can use the new language, we can have the new safety protocols, but we need to find a way that this is actionable for us, accountable in the really direct action sense of the word. So how can we make that language? Because currently the language we have is a virus. It is so heavily laden with stuff that, when you look at proposals coming in or partnerships where people say, we're a culturally safe organization. That's a rubber stamp. How do we know? How can we make this practical? How can we check on a daily basis in our application writing and our engagement that we are actually walking the talk?
Okay, so where did you get to? Sorry.
I don't know, freestyle.
Okay. You did. All right, well, I think I'm going to do, okay, so critiques of privilege and power need to be created by us so we can come prepared, okay, not just wait and be led and see what happens. So, and for me, ignorance is a choice, not an excuse. So every time we say, oh, it's out of my hands, that is a choice. And I think fundamentally, courage is something that's learned, and you have to practice it. And that's something we have to share with each other. It's not something that some of us, especially it inhabits and will outsource it. And also, let's not outsource evil. Let's not go, oh, power is something that evil people do. Let's start to talk about how I am saying I want control, and in that negotiation, that is where the power sits. Let's negotiate. Let's actually say, we're going to try that, and that is risky. That's hard work.
And we, our third collaborator in our tiny little group, said that actually seeking justice, and she said seeking truth and justice is challenging. So let's not assume that it will be comfortable. That came up a couple of times. Why would it be comfortable? Why do we, as privileged people, most of us are, we are here, how did we get here, that it would be comfortable? That's what makes me often concerned about the frames around cultural safety and cultural competencies. When we hear this, but are they comfortable? Who's they? Am I comfortable? Can I actually stand the uncomfort, and can I learn with that? Can I hit the wall running and make that glorious failure and learn from that? And that would be bruising at times. But for me, in my life, in the practice that we have led, that's where we made our best work.
So yeah, it's an opportunity for change. Everyone's talking about it. We are bringing our fear and confusion, and that we're banging up against each other with that fear and confusion, but that's the space. This is exciting. And so we're proposing, I suppose, two things. One is that every campaign has this lens, the critical lens of how am I going to look at my privilege? How are we opening that conversation? And so if that can be built into the visions and actions, and it's an ongoing, agile feedback loop, blah-de-blah-de-blah, because no situation is the same. It's about that negotiation space. And second, you want to do? Yeah.
I will do the second, yes.
Okay.
That's the last thing. We were proposing a working group for Arts Front 2030. That's not just a proposal, we're happy to run it and manage it and delegate it. Because it's not just, how we're going to do it, how do we speak to privilege and power? There are actually tools already out there, lots of them. We have quite some of them, there are many more out there. We would like to collate them and practice them and actually offer to run a series of workshops with organizations and build that into the partnerships. That could be done relatively inexpensive. It could be ideally done through skill sharing, that it hasn't just to be us or a few experts around it. It could be all of us. But let's say with most of our other techniques, we are acknowledging there are learnable skills. There's muscle that needs to be built. There needs to be resilience and robustness built into our processes. That doesn't come just accidentally, and especially for privileged people, it comes apparently really hard. You know, a lot of people who live in direct oppression in the front lines, they will understand that, I guess. But for me, for instance, this is a very, very difficult learned process. I feel really socially challenged around that, and I guess a lot of people will share that with me. So we need to actually invest into this. That we need to learn how to negotiate. We need to define that new language with each other. Thanks.
Hey, cheers.
Can you just talk to each other for a couple of minutes while Peter and I work out what the most sensible way to go is? Hello, let's go. So here's what we're suggesting to you. Most of these recommendations are about working groups going on working on the topics and that being open to people to join in and be part of it. So, and we'll go through them one by one just to double check that they're going in a direction that people are happy with. But that we might actually say, yes, we do think work needs to go on these topics. We do need to make sure we've got somebody who's happy to keep hosting that discussion for the time being. I mean, at some point you might want to change pass the baton with somebody, but at least make sure we've got somebody to host these discussions in the first instance. And then that we actually open the floor to let people talk about how they feel about that stuff. But, let's, in a sense, deal with the formality first and then have a more open session with people responding to what they've heard other groups saying. Find those things that are the most important for you, and in particular, letting the quieter voices in the room, have a say and be part of the conversation. So rather than spending a long time on each recommendation, I'm suggesting they're process recommendations and we move quickly through them. And then and that we do that in the next half an hour, and then we spend the remaining hour in an open discussion about people's ideas about things. Yes? Yes. Righto, let's do it then. The first people's recommendation we may need, and don't try and wordsmith, we'll let other people wordsmith later. It is the essence of what's been recommended to you, okay? That there be support for the First Peoples in their vision to establish a national Indigenous arts and cultural authority. We all agree, yes? Group one actually set up, asked that every person go on their own cultural awareness journey in the next year. Agreed? Group two proposed an ongoing working group. So this is about achieving a collective voice. So this working group agreed that it would take responsibility to continue a discussion about how we achieve a collective voice, and they're looking at developing a list of questions when planning and how to do things so that you hear all voices. Is that a reasonable summary from that group? Yes, and it could,
without wanting to take over from what the group have discussed, it seemed obvious to me, listening to the feedback, that ours would feed in quite substantially to a couple of the other recommendations around developing the campaign.
Yes.
And so, I think that we just need a bit of post-gathering conversation to align those tasks.
Yes. So actually that's very good, June. So there is a steering group. We'll refer all of these recommendations to the steering group to do some alignment of them and work out where the overlaps are. Is there a name of somebody who's putting their name next to group two? June. Yes. Good woman. June Morehouse. For the next step. Yes, for the next step. You don't have to promise things for life. Hello, John Smithies. I didn't realise you were in the room. Your name was said. And he said your name out loud, and I thought he'd done that in your absence. Okay, group three, building political power through alliances and connecting. So this is the really hard one, where they've got a whole series of fabulous, practical, constructive things to do that are pretty enormous. This needs some work. So my question to you is, are you happy for there to be an ongoing online discussion about how to do this, what things can be picked up and moved forward? And who's going to put their name next to it?
We might even be able to quickly get together at some point and actually put the names onto various. Some of those things are really practical and could just happen quite quickly.
Fabulous.
So, what do you reckon, group?
Okay, so that group with Sue's name next to it because she opened her mouth. That you'll get that group together, that you'll look at those and see where there are obvious names that can go for action, and we'll list that as an important topic and give other people the opportunity to write in and say, I know somebody who could do A, B and C. Yeah? Yes. Good woman. Group 4, this is about shifting from protocols to values. So this group need to work together online to develop a series of value statements that would become part of people's practice. Yes? Whose name's on this? Paula Aboud. As a general principle, everybody's happy with that? Yeah, okay, yep. There's one up the back and one down the front and...
I think there has been some work that was done already around a charter for the arts, and that potentially that could be a good thing to feed into this recommendation.
Yes, done.
Sorry, moving from being a journalist to actually asking a question. Realistically, this notion of shifting from protocols to values that the whole sector can adopt, is that realistically possible for the whole sector to adopt? It sounds like a lifetime's work for everyone in this room, not just one small working group. Sorry to be cynical.
No, okay. Let's just park this topic and we'll pick it up in the next hour because then everybody can have a bit of a say about it. I'll come back to it. Group 5 is about communication within the sector. This clearly still needs a lot of work. There are practical proposals in there about multiple languages and resources that exist and developing online and digital and analogue resources. But we know we've got Elliot's name next to it. And participation in this, as in all other groups, is open to everybody. Not just the people in this room, it's an open topic. So Elliot's providing leadership for a discussion about how to build the communication between us. Is that generally accepted? Yeah. Okay. Group 6 is about campaigns. They gave us a definition of a campaign, which we might talk about in this next hour. Wanting to build on the existing things and develop a platform. Bong and John Smithies have got their name on that topic and will provide leadership for that. Yes? So generally, the notion of trying to get some... I agree. I think that we need to think about either we're defining what campaign means or we're using a number of topics, campaign, stroke, project, stroke, like whatever it is, since we're looking at inclusion. So in general, and they're talking about developing tools for how to run campaigns and how to be successful. So there'll be a group working on that. You happy with that? Okay, Group 7's the public awareness topic. So this is about, on the one hand, the project which already exists, so which Kick Arts are providing the leadership for, I think. Am I right? Yeah. So that project exists, and everyone's invited to participate in that project. In addition, They're talking about developing some way of working out in public campaigns when that happens, who speaks, what can they say. Like, so there's a general conversation about, I was about to say protocols, but in this case it probably is, about protocols for how to manage that and how the representation and advocacy occurs. And that looks to me as if that's a separate, bigger, more general topic than the campaign that you're running. Is that reasonable? Okay. Is there somebody who is prepared to put their name on managing a discussion like that about if we are to speak with one voice, how we do that and how people are empowered to say things? And the collective voice, so we can add it into that topic. Righto, done. So it's tied with number 2. So that bigger part of the topic's gone back in how we get a collective voice as part of 2. Everybody happy? Perfect. Okay, I'm up to group 8 and my computer fell apart at that point or dropped out offline. Can you give me 8, Scotia? Oh yes, this is about bringing artists together. I just don't have the recommendations in front of me. Maz, have you got them in front of you? Righto. I don't know why that page dropped off. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, so there's some work to be done in getting peak bodies to... So it's about how to make sure that individual artists are engaged in all the things that happen, because it's harder for that for individual artists than it is for people who work in organisations. So there's a responsibility for organisations and peak bodies and campaigns and projects like this to think through. So there's wanting to develop models of intergenerational and diverse engagement of practice. So I guess that's, developing up some ideas and, so we're talking about materials that we might be able to pass on in an intergenerational way, which is pretty good. A gathering of artists, a resource list about places and equipment, rethinking the colonial construct. Oh, are they? Yeah.
A conference for artists.
A conference just for artists.
Yeah. To come together, not for bureaucrats and arts workers and organisational people. Artists.
All right. Where are the recommendations? Hang on.
Part of that was also about artistic activations. So it also taps into the communication and the campaign so that artists are involved in actually making work together across the nation that taps into, the other points as well.
Okay, so here's a question. Is it the case that we need to take the points out of this workshop and feed them back across the others? Yeah. And then it becomes part of every discussion that's going on, and we don't have to have that as a separate topic.
And also, I feel like working group 5...
Hang on.
Like working... And if there's anything left over that could be collated with working group 5, which is about how we're going to communicate with this within the sector.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's perfect. Okay, so I'm up to 9, the infrastructure group, who have proposed that they keep working and that other people join them in looking at the issues of hard and soft infrastructure, to support artists, to develop the finance, the freeing us up, independently finance us, or not independently, how to free up the finance and to get some response into the innovation and creativity inquiry. So that group is proposing. Is there somebody's name?
So I'm going to be the one to coordinate the next meeting for our group.
Fabulous.
Yeah, as a
And
follow-up.
you'll put it online so other people can join you if they want to
Can do.
have something to say. That I think that every group needs to do that now, open. So all the groups are open and all the notes are there on the website, so there's constant transparency about what's happening, yeah? Okay, that's fantastic.
One more thing, sorry, Anne. And Theatre Network New South Wales will coordinate with AMPAG around those 2 to 3 messages, and we'll circulate that via Arts Front for anyone else who's able or wanting to make a submission to the inquiry.
Fabulous. Okay.
I think it's important to say that it's not about freeing up finance, but it's about connecting artists to the new economy movement, which is a peer-to-peer network.
And there's also already an existing finance project that Kathy Hunt's running that's looking at new ways as well.
Sorry, can I just add one thing? NAVA will also do a submission to the Innovation Fund as well for the visual arts.
Fabulous. Okay, topic 10 is Bill's topic about the context. I suggested to him that he write up those questions and that we put them online and give people the opportunity to start feeding into it and build a conversation about that. Would you be happy enough? And it's got Bill's name on it? Yes? Okay, and the power and privilege people, they've also proposed that they will host a group to look at those questions and issues and tools and materials that they spoke about. Are you happy with that proceeding? Oh, you're so wonderful. Okay, so there are obviously some things to be talked about here, and there are issues, like there's a big topic about the charter, but there's also all the issues that have come up in the last few days. So just take a bit of a deep breath. We've got an hour, 1 hour in this next session. We'll have a break at 3:20, and Peter will facilitate you into some open discussion about what's important to you. What do you think about charter and value statements, and where are we going? All yours, brother.
No, yeah. Everyone awake? Okay, I guess we've got a bit of a starting point back to that discussion then of protocols to values. Does anyone? And this is the last hour, so you don't want to go away with something burning and shit, I should have said that. So this is the time. Have we only got one roving mic?
But
don't cramp up.
We've got these here, let's use them. You can come, bring yourself out.
Yep.
If you see what I mean. Here you go.
Hello. I want to make a comment in response to Richard's question about how realistic it is to move from protocol to principles and values. I want to use myself as an example, as a metaphor. So we're nearly at the end of day 3. So I'm deaf. I rely on being able to hear people. I've been very grateful for the use of the caption. Anne has consistently, over the last 3 days, reminded people to use the microphone so that people can read the caption, so that the people online can hear us. We are all good people in this room. We're all thoughtful people. We care about issues. We care about principles and values. We care about each other. We're not mean. We don't want to be hurtful, and we don't want to be excluding. And yet, still in the final afternoon, day 3, there's been a persistent pattern of forgetting to use the microphone. I've been a bit upset about this, but I want to turn it around into demonstrating how embodied, how practiced and rehearsed our lives are, so that to make a shift in practice, it's very, very difficult for all of us. It's very difficult. And it's very difficult for me to stand up here outing myself, because I've been brought up not to draw attention to myself. But I'm drawing attention to myself because I want to use myself as a metaphor to highlight the reality of Visha's question. Of course we live by our principles and values, but until we understand why we have them, we don't know how to affect them. We all need guidelines. I'll let you join the dot. Thank you.
Forgive me, I don't normally speak, but this is important. My mother was in a wheelchair. She was diabetic. She passed away. She had no legs. So, sis, with all due respect, I just want to say even sometimes deaf people are in a more privileged position than our people. That's still in English. Our people sit on your own, sabi when you talk about. Or sit down by, if all wasn't with TV, they don't know what the hell you're talking about. So still, when we have people stand up here and speak on behalf of us, that's the problem. You still get misinterpreted. Like I've been one group over there about protocol. Sister been stand up here, talk on behalf of us, and I still felt I was misinterpreted. What I'm trying to say is, when we were asked, what question would you ask? What I posed that question there. I want someone to ask me, do you want my job? I'm not talking about, like MB speak Yantap, First Nation, First People, whatever, or ethnic or colored, people with disability. No, stop putting us in a line. Ethnic, people with disability, yes, we got some with us, people with disability, but isn't this about us, putting us here, central? So what I'm trying to say is when I've been asked that question, I want the white fella to ask me, do you want my job? Whether I'm in a wheelchair, you know? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's hard for explain, but
you want me to say to you, do you want my job?
Yeah.
And can I help you get my job? Is that what
yes.
you mean?
And I'm talking about first mob being asked that question, not the ethnic mob asked that question. Ethnic mob is still guest bo mipla or Australians boya. You know? Like, what is Australian? If I be born with China, I'm not Chinese. So one more thing, I want to know, like, you know, just, it's really hard to believe that this room full of people, that you know, got one person here that's not comfortable about this new thing, this change. It's new to this group. That's why I speak new. I don't know where Suri, but this thinking that change is happening now. It might have happened a little bit, but I can feel it got changed. But yes, naturally, because we're all human beings, it got a bit of resistance in here. Whether we want to pretend that, no, I'm fine with it. We're not stupid people. I always tell people when dog bite you, you're going to be careful. The dog bites you again. The more often you get bitten by a dog, you're going to start watching movement. You'll be more aware of that movement. We've been bitten plenty times. We're aware of who the ones are, who the deadly ones, who the gammon ones. Gammon. Gammon. So please, I just want to say, let's be real. Let's not leave here today and go back to your normal self. Otherwise, this is all a waste of bloody time. I could have been back there with my grandson.
Thanks, Rita. And look, I'll just follow on from those two comments in my views of this, and goes to the need to move from protocols to values, because of course protocols, and particularly for blackfellas, and we see this, there are so many protocols out there that are written up and they're just pieces of paper to be put aside and forgotten. And I think what we're talking about is, yes, we do need values, and yes, it is going to be hard because everyone has to change. But what Rita was just saying, and what has been conveyed, is that values is personal responsibilities. That's what we carry. That's what we're leaving our inheritance, our legacies. And I think that's the importance that we've heard this. You can hear the frustrations of that. We've opened doors time and time again. And it's not just us, but we are taking, as I said there, our feet are firmly planted. We're First Peoples here. And you use our experiences, because that's just as we have the hidden histories, that's what other people, get put aside and marginalised. But if you can empathise with us and open up, that's the opening to something new, and a new concept that, I haven't seen this before. There's something in the wind, so to speak. But what's the follow-on? There's no need to open up to something new, but there has to be that willingness to embrace it and to change, and then to drive action to continue. So yes, it is a big aspiration, but you look at it from our inheritance, what we are leaving, because that's where we come from. That's why we've been around for so long, and that's what we're trying to get you guys to understand. And there's big political issues like climate change and all of that. That impacts our people even more. I won't start on that. That's just because these are the things that are happening now in our own country, that our countrymen are having to move, let alone in the Pacific. But these are, this is what it's all about in terms of values.
Someone who doesn't talk much, I speak a lot. So, I guess I really need to make myself clear, because, English is my second language too. So what I'm trying to say, I think, is, we're talking about this colonization or whatever, but, when I speak, them kind of like, if a white fella asks our mob, like, do you want my job? I'm saying, we understand that it's about giving power over. You're finally going, there you go, there's the power, it's in your hands. So are you really willing to hand over that power? You have to trust that we can do what you can do. And you have to know your place in Australia as white people. Even as, people from other countries. So, sorry. I also want to say that our mob too have to make it a safe place for people to express. Because if there is uncomfortable people in the room, we have to know why. Because we have to work through that. We have to help them through that. whether it's education, understanding how they feel. So we have to know if people are uncomfortable, but people have to start listening to why too, and making them feel safe about expressing how they feel. So thank you.
Thanks, Rita.
As a mother, as a grandmother, yeah, I have 8 grandchildren, so, you know, I'm really lucky. I worry about them for the next 7 generations, my family, my community, and I come from a really small community. So I want to know what protocols, whose values are we talking about? Because I'm not about to give up my protocols and my values, and I've worked with non-Aboriginal people across the arts world. And they've shit on me and I won't work with them again. I won't even look at them or give them the time of day. And so I want to know, what's the point of having protocols and values if a culture that comes from a reading culture, and I don't come from a reading culture, but yet I know my protocols and my values, they can't even bloody read them, let alone adhere to them. So, yeah, I'm with you, sister. I don't want to be here wasting 3 days on gammon stuff. I want people to be real. I want to know that the future of my grandchildren are in good hands. I want to make sure that the work that people like Uncle Bob, Uncle Michael, my sister Nancy, Peter, Tristan, Siri, our young people, because they've done work too that has moved our people forward. And I want to know whose protocol and whose values, and are you really, really, truly in your heart, not in your head, because that's how Western culture thinks, in their head, but in your heart, are you truly, truly going to walk the road with us, not behind us, not in front of us, but beside us and with our values?
Hey, it's me. The reason why I speak is because I've lost my mother, my father, my sister, and my brother. All right, just so you know. We lose people every day of our lives. We all can relate to that. But sometimes we aren't taught by the people who leave us. Some people leave legacies, and that's what they've done with me. And I'm passing on what I've been learnt, and what I've been shown, and that's through spirit. So that's how us mob, we learn through storytelling, through dance, through ceremony, through our culture. That's what it's about, yeah? That's why we're all here, though, in the sense of knowing that we all tell our own stories. And what a better way than to do it through our art forms, and to express, what we do. I think in the last 3 days, I've been refreshed as well. There's some beautiful stuff happening. And it's just so empowering to see everyone in this room, and who I've spoken to so far, are just so deeply passionate about what they do. And it's a beautiful thing. And the thing is, we've been cut. And not only are we being cut with funding, we've been cut in spirit, we've been cut with the capacity of what we can become has been thrown down, cut, severed completely. That's what it is. So how can we empower the world with expression? And that's through spirit, because you all have a form of spirit, and it runs through your culture, through your families. I don't ever think once to be biased. We don't think we're better than you. We just know how to look after country. That's what it's about. And I was saying to a couple of conversations, if you have a tree, Lenka had a perfect little session, which I hope some of you attended. This tree has so much power and knowledge, and has been there for thousands of years. Once you sever that tree, you sever your breathing. You rely on trees to breathe, don't you? And I know everyone in this room believes that. They know that. I guess my point is, we've got to realise that in the end, we are doing what we do. And I was hoping we'd do one exercise before I say anything else just before I finish. If we can all stand up, because there's a lot of people in this room who've never met each other as well. And you're going to have someone on your left and the right of you. I want you to give that person a hug. Show your love. Because it's hard. Just give each other a hug. You know why? Because in the end, we love. That's what artists do. We love what we do as well, and we love expression. So thank you.
This is what we have to offer.
So, I handed the mic and I'm expecting to say something. Sometimes it's good to do things spontaneously. Wa ngai kulai mamu apa pudis. Ko kui ko mabaigal pa. Ko koba mabaigal. I just did an acknowledgement that I recognise the traditional custodians of this country that we're standing on, the ancestors here, the old people, the unseen, that follow us and guide us in our decision making. We're talking about our spirituality right here. We can't do anything wrong. For some of us, take the wrong step, we'll be down there. So it's very real to us, very real what we're talking about. But I also very much believe in change. Change will only come when we all work together. But you've got to take that step. Come to our festivals. Come and work with us. You've got to take that step. Because we've been doing it for a long time now. We're tired of doing that. I've been on this journey with Brother Leo there, with the National Indigenous Cultural Authority. That was back there. We're talking about 7 years ago. Now that's our legacy. Now you people here got to help us take it forward. And I'd really like to hear those ideas. Essel.
Yes, sir.
Look, my name's Henry Atkinson. I'm a holistic person with Yorta Yorta Nations. And, you know, some of my uncles, William Cooper, Sir Doug Nichols, you know, great people. And you know how long ago that is? Not long in their terms, but long in your terms, that they've been trying to achieve, you know, a better life for Indigenous people. And I just hope this is the start of it. Now, I've been involved in a lot of things over my life, right from the time, I suppose, age of 15, trying to achieve things. Just like with Bob, him and I, we've done lots of things together. But, you know, for me, I'm an educator, but you know, I've learned a lot of my things from my ancestors, and I carry it in here. Aboriginal people really want to work with, you know, non-Indigenous people. We want to share that knowledge. But the main thing where we want to really achieve things, when you stop and think for a start, you know, incarceration of our people for minor things, deaths in custody, our young ones taking their own lives. I go up to the Northern Territory, you know, the young ones up there, you know what they want to do? they want to be incarcerated so they can go into jail and come out as men to be able to protect themselves. That's how they're thinking up there, but it gets to them and they end up taking their own lives. When we're talking about closing this gap, as far as the health goes, how long has that been going? Very, very long time. And I say, if you really want to close the gap, give the young children a good education. That way you will close the gap. You'll be able to make the young ones healthier, where they can go and do whatever they want to do through life. So I say, really, you've been asked to have a look at the, inclusion plans and reconciliation plans. Go and find out about Aboriginal people and you will learn a lot. And by doing that, you'll be able to make a lot of friends and also understand us as peoples and to maybe close that gap that's, over 20 years old. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Adrian. Oh. There's just one comment there.
Oh,
Do you want to read it out, Norm?
You do.
Oh, my glasses are all. You able to read that?
I think love should be a guiding principle of Arts Front. We sometimes avoid this word, I think. Frightened we will be dismissed as being too soft or weak somehow. Grateful to the last speaker for voicing love and bringing the value and warmth to the room.
So a lot of what we're talking about also is, you've probably heard it a lot, courage. So I'm going to throw it open. Is there any responses? We've got one over here and one up the back.
Hey, I'd love to work together, and I am really scared because I don't like to follow. I've got really strong beliefs and values, but I want to listen and I want to work together, and I do want that, that trust, because why me up on that seat? Why not you guys? Really?
Yep.
Because there are fucking brilliant principles, there are all these amazing things that we could share. I'd love to start. Cheers.
Thank you. I think we had one up the back. You can come down the front, stand in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Just come down the front.
Hi, my name's Kelly. I grew up on Larrakia land and I lived for a long time on Arundel land, and I think, handing over privilege makes me feel really scared and uncomfortable. And talking about colonisation, it makes me feel really uncomfortable because my family's been in the territory for 5 generations, which means we've been involved in some really fucking awful stuff. And I don't even know what that is because it's really hard to talk about as a white person, but I can't live like this anymore. I can't belong, I'm diasporic, I don't have anywhere to go back to. And so I'm in this no man's land, and I think that's desperately why we need a treaty. And I think it's, we won't belong and have a home until we work this out. And it hurts, it hurts all of us. Colonisation, it hurts the colonised and the colonisers, and we need to remove this from our bodies, we need to remove this from our country. And I think that the more us white fellas actually lean into the pain and into the uncomfortableness, because that's when you're somewhere you haven't been before, and we're going somewhere we haven't been before. And, to acknowledge the grief and the hurt that we feel, and not to ask Aboriginal people to do that, but just to say, this is pain. It's painful to hurt other people, and I don't want to live like this anymore. So yeah, it is really confronting, but thank you for having the courage to, do the lights and go, come over here into this really uncomfortable space, because I think that that's where we make change.
Thank you.
I grew up in Gunditjmara country, and I have a really strong love of that land. And I'm a little bit nervous speaking up here, but I just also wanted to say that I think those principles of the first people of this country should be at the centre of everything that we talk about and everything we do, because coming back to absolute basics, what are we standing on? Where are we standing? What air do we breathe? What water are we using? If we don't sort this stuff out, we're not going to survive on this planet. So we need to follow these core principles and live with love. Live with love for this place that we're lucky enough to live in.
Anyone? Oh.
The young lady, just there from Darwin, worked with Kelly. You run away. You feel like that sometimes, Kelly. Because I don't want to keep fighting this. And can you imagine the people that's gone before us fighting your people? Sometimes we've got to stop and we've got to say, when's the war going to end? It's one that continues. It's a psychological one. Our children, our grandchildren, I'm a child of a mother and father and a grandmother and a grandfather. We were born into racism. We were born into a struggle. So I'm now 60-something. Still a little bit young. But ever since that time that I know what my grandmother and grandfathers have done, and all their friends and all their family members have continued to do. And they continue to struggle, to fight, to get a better life, to have a just and fair society, and to find a mature society, a society that can wear the mantle that it is a just and fair society. And it starts with people like yourselves, who can go home, teach your children never to be like whoever, you've seen those sorts of attitudes. I'll say a Joby or Peterson or a Charlie Court. Those sorts of people, or a Pauline Hanson. We had the opportunity to basically become mature. And as far as I know, being grown up in the arts, I went to the Darling Downs Institute of Advanced Education back in the 70s. Well, that was a wonderful time. There was some great music, there was some great visual arts, and there was a theme throughout the world about love. And I can't see how you get that out of your mind. And there were some really great stories. It was a time when everybody was united. It was against wars and things like that. And I say that most of the people here, or everybody here, are good people, believe in that and the quest for the true humanity. I don't want my grandkids fighting your grandkids in the future, having to struggle and strive. That's got to stop. And we've got to become a mature society. I mean, there's got to be a time where we can enjoy the company of each other, not just within forums like this, but generally outside. For most black fellas, standing at the lights waiting to cross in a city, we know we're in target country. We know we're not welcome. Because for generation after generation, we've been told, go back to where you belong. Us fellas, we're told. When we're already there. So all I'm trying to say, I suppose, is that, look, you got the opportunity, don't waste it. And we can fiddle around with all the protocols, but we were born with protocols and principles and ethics through laws in our family, in our community. And they're just normal, everyday life. Things that we have to do. That's the way we live it. We can't just forget them. And we can't forget, you know, the rivers and the lands and the trees and every other thing that grows on the land. We can't forget that because we were born into a culture that basically says you have a responsibility and you have a purpose in this life to look after all other forms of life and care for it and make sure you leave it in a better place for the next lot of generations. And I think that's where we're at. That's where we're going to go. You know what you've got to do here. It's just people and people doing things. There are protocols, there are principles, and there are ethics. But just as people, wanting to work with people and allow each other to share that culture on our own terms and to basically showcase it to the rest of the world. You don't know what it's all about with us yet. You've only seen glimmers. And we're saying, let us in there. Let us have ownership. Let us have control. Let us be preeminent all the way through our life, because our life is nothing else but culture and the arts. Ceremony, laws and songs and dance. That's what it's always been about. It's not digging it up, becoming a millionaire like Ziggy Forrest. He'll get a contract from the government about Aborigines and how Aborigines should actually work and be employed. Did he talk about things like let them decide what they need to do so that their children can follow and to maintain that oldest living culture? That's what we're trying to do. We can help pass that on. We can teach your children and your families those things. I know you just want a good world. Stupid if you don't.
Look, what we might propose, because it's been some pretty heavy stuff, but pretty great stuff, is just have a little break for about 15 minutes and then we'll reconvene. But I guess just to reiterate, what we've heard, the responses, the movement, and people, yes, this is Arts Front. There's some big issues. You've heard the issues here. This is, for us, having this platform, being front and centre, sharing this. There's lots of issues out there for the arts sector, but they pale in comparison of what it is. It's not art, it's culture for us. So if you apply what our, as a collective, what our issues are, what we have to address, if you're on the journey with us of helping solve some of these, not only solve some of the issues, but charting the new way forward. Because, we've heard about decolonising and that, but, the decolonising is about the future, the shared future. Because, if you, really, is there a reality of decolonising one space that's, sending the boats back? And we go, we can't, that's a reality. We can't do that. There has to be a shared future together. And from those shared futures, we get the answers. So all of these issues that we've been discussed over the last 3 days, as well as the First Nations voices that you've heard, they're the solutions. I can't keep on saying it enough. We have the solutions. It's not only the solutions of the arts, it's the solutions for this country. We see what's happening over in America and England and all over the places. Do we want to become like that? Because that's what we are. Because to us, we've always been like that since fucking 1800 or, yeah. So, you know, do we want to, and this is the room, this is the group, this is our sector. You know, we're not going to get that from academia. We're not going to get it from science. We're not even going to get it from the humanities. It comes from here, and it comes from us working with you guys hand in hand. So I'll just leave that with you, and then we'll come back in about 15 minutes. Thanks. And thank everyone for you know, sharing and being receptive and things. Oh my God.
Excuse me, everyone. Can I just, anyone who's wanting to fly out this evening, can I just ask that you check in with your airline about the flight details? There's been some stories on the media about problems with plane refueling. So it is only affecting some airlines apparently. We're going to try and get more details for you, but if you've got a capacity to check your flight details, it's a good time to do that.
Of course, that'd be mine.
And we've just confirmed there's no problem with Virgin flights. We'll change to the other airlines.
Thank you. Because that would have been the last. I was saying that a couple of people, yeah, that was the beauty of art. That people came away from this was something quite special. So hopefully that's going to be the difference.
Can I give you guys anything? Thank you for those. That was fantastic.
Well, this is what the, you know, this is the
Content we need to do. No, we're done, you think? I think we're done.
No, no.
Oh, you're there. Bless you. Thank you. So, we just need everyone who's coming in to sit down briefly. There, some coming.
Yeah, I think everyone's slowly.
Well, you can't have them being slowly.
No.
They have to be fastly.
Am I on? No.
Yes, you are.
Yep. Okay, well, we might get this starting because I, amongst a lot of other people, need to navigate through the joys of Melbourne Airport on a Friday afternoon and get out there early. But look, that was fantastic, that last session, for all the obvious reasons. But I guess what I want to leave before I quickly duck out the door is that the First Nations steering group of Arts Front, I'll be having a discussion and putting it out through the First Nations delegation of everything that we've said today. We'll go through and do our response and feed that back in from a First Nations cultural authority, and then we can begin and tie in with those discussions. So that will be from the group here as well as further afield. And that's what we'll be doing as part of being inclusive in this process. Now, before I quickly head out the door, I'd just like to first off thank our hosts here, the Kulin Nation, and it's been great to be on the country, as well as Footscray Arts Centre, which is great, and thanks for being here. And just from my thanks, thank you everyone. As I said, I haven't seen this type of thing before. And part of it, yes, it is us here for standing up and having our voice, but we also need those people to hear us. So thank you. I'd like to thank my First Nations brothers and sisters for being here. There was a big effort. There's a lot of people that have come down for this that you've seen over the days. And I'd like to specially thank one person that actually really made all of this happen, and that's Jasmine here, for all of the work. So she was the one that was able to organise and bring all of us mob together, so we can have our platform. So thank you, and you'll be hearing from me.
And don't move.
Peter, what I'd like to do is just thank you on behalf of the First Nations people, and certainly Jasmine, for leading us through the way for the last 2 days. And it's so I say thanks very much and safe journeys. And it's been good to catch up with you.
Yes.
16 years gone by. So thanks a lot, Peter.
Thanks, Unc. Thank you
Hang
all.
on, Peter. Hang on. Peter, stand still. Because the rest of the room want to say thank you for your leadership and care.
And look, it's the old thing, it's not me, I'm just the big buff head that likes to crack heads and sometimes is a bit loud, but, it is all of this that it is one voice. Sometimes it just comes through me, or sometimes it comes through other people, but it is from all of us. So thank you. But
Peter, sometimes it needs all of us to have a great big voice and a big man, and so you were it, so thanks.
Okay, so here's where we're going, just to get back to the program. We just need to have not very long conversation in practical terms about where we're going to from here, what steps there are likely to be, what you can expect, etc. And then all of us are going outside together with Lily and some cohorts for a closing ceremony, and then we're coming back to have something to eat and a drink. We've decided that no more content can be managed. Actually, to be honest, Deborah Mills had to talk me into that. I'm saying, couldn't we do one more session? No, she said. Okay, so I'll have a go, and Norm and Sarah, you jump into it. So, there is a steering committee for Arts Front at the moment. Anybody who wants to can be on the steering committee. You just send your name in and you get sent the details of the call-in number. So Feral Arts hosts a discussion amongst the steering committee people who are available. Recently it's been just about every week because there's been so much to discuss, and for a little while that's probably likely to be true, because that steering committee is going to pick up all of this work that you've done and do that rationalising, make some sense out of it, see where there are connections and there are crossovers, so that it can come back to you as a kind of coherent and not too complicated document. That means people can start inputting into it and adding to it and, you know, building it. Start building the vision, building what the campaigning and what we're going to do together, and keep communicating with each other. So, what do you actually have to do, Norm, if you want to be on the steering committee?
As you said, Anne, it's an open process. We'll put out an update from Arts Front to the full mailing list, and the invitation to the next meeting will be in that. And anyone who wants to join is welcome to. We'll also try to itemise the working group ideas that have been proposed, and suggest some ways for people to meet. A lot of the work that Scotia and Bong have been leading in terms of supporting other ways of us communicating and collaborating. We want to get some evaluation and support from feedback from you guys on how that's worked, and pick up the best of those things for our communication and collaboration stuff as we go forward.
So just for those who aren't aware, if you haven't put up your profile, that is how you get on the mailing list. Is that correct? So that's where we grab your email addresses. So put up your profile if it's not there.
So, I mean, a really good thing for everyone to do would be to get 10 other people to put up their profile. So there is a sense of a growing group of people who know what's happened. If you could talk to 10 people about what's happened and how the experience was, and, what you learned and what you took away, and what the advantages might be over time, what we're doing over the next 3 to 4 years in terms of developing a vision, like just all of that sense of there being something growing that's so big that it can't be stopped in 4 years is something that we need to think about. How do we make a general sense across Australia that people in the arts are working together for the best outcomes for Australia, and this is what they're doing. So it's like everybody can do something about that. So anyway, get your profile on, join. You can, it's sort of like everything. It's participant directed, but you can go on the steering committee and follow something for 3 months and then go, I'm out. I've got a million things to do in my life, and go off. And 6 months later, you can come back in. There's no rules about it. The value proposition, no, the value protocol is you come in, you do your best while you're in there, you don't grizzle about what you've missed, work hard and catch up to where things are, and put your 10 cents worth in, and then when you're called away, you're gone. It's okay. Come back when you're ready, and as often as you like. So, Is there anyone who's got...
I'm a good example of that, Anne, because I started off at the steering committee after Norman and Sarah invited me, and then I had all this work to do, and I had to do that work, and then I've come back.
So, who's got questions left, or issues, or unresolved things? Yes. Who's got a microphone? Is that the story? Yep. Nobody's got any issues? Nothing outstanding? We've got some lessons that we've learned this time, and we'll document those as well and give you, in the sort of evaluation of the process, give you an opportunity to talk about how we could improve. We know, for example, that we need to find different ways of running forums when we have them. Some people need more time for reflection. It needs to be less. It can't all be pushed and squeezed. There needs to be this open time. Times when you go like this and times when you go like that. And we need to learn to do that. We learned a really big lesson about people of colour and people with disabilities, and how to truly embody a different way of doing things that makes those people feel inclusive. And there might be other people who want to add into the website about things that they think that could be done differently there. We've had a huge go at modelling First Nations first, and partnering in facilitation of sessions, and in some things being led, and how all of that works. So you'll have an opportunity to comment and tell us whether you think we could do that better. So you'll have an opportunity to input in. We've got all the lessons about how to do the social media better and how to do the online thing. So, it's been a huge exercise in learning, and for us just to somehow take all of that in so that it becomes normal for us to do the things that we know are inclusive, rather than something special that we've put ourselves out to do. So I look forward to all that. Yes, Bob.
It might be just something really, really bloody silly, but it's getting under my skin. I've heard it said a couple of times since I've been in this forum, the word colour, coloured people. I'm not a rainbow. I think, does it hurt? Does that disturb anybody else, or is it just me? Hey, put your hand up if it disturbs you, worries you. Feel uncomfortable with that word. Because the first time I heard it was South Africa and the apartheid laws. And those sorts of things. White fellas teaching us, them coloured folk and all that sort of thing. I don't like it. It's not a very nice word in that sense.
I think that's...
we can use?
Well, I think that's really good feedback, and we need to put that up and have that discussion. Yeah. It's been used by people in this forum to mean people who are not First Nations people and who are not Anglo-Celts, white, European. So
I'm not a modern anthropologist, archaeologist interpreting other people to themselves.
I'd have to say my understanding was that came from the people of colour themselves, and I've tried to be respectful of that. Is that right? Yes. So that is the description they use themselves, but it's a reasonable topic to put up and say, let's talk about that. Is that a respectful way to talk about people who are non-European, non-Indigenous? Of this land, yeah.
I think it's important to note that the difference between coloured people and people of colour. I think when people of colour has been used, in my understanding, it's actually to band together in solidarity with people who experience systemic racism because of how they are interpreted, in a dominant white society. But I think coloured people has very, very different meanings, and I would never use that to describe myself, and I don't think my friends and allies would ever describe themselves as coloured people. But we did deliberately use people of colour which is more commonly used, I think, in the States. And I think in Australia, I've been in a few conversations where people are like, what does that mean? So I feel like, there's a kind of different levels of people kind of being familiar with that term. So I'm happy to have a conversation about terminology, and also I'm aware that there's been a few conversations around it as well. So just putting that out there as well. Thank you.
And I mean, certainly this forum will be respectful of how you describe yourselves at this time. Let's talk about it. You might want to change that yourselves. We won't change it for you. Not ours to change. But thanks for raising it, Bob. It's really good.
Yeah, look, I'll just follow on from where Bob's started off on this point. And I appreciate and I understand that you guys would not be discriminating. I understand that. But you've got to understand where Aboriginal Australia and Torres Strait people come from and what we've had to put up with as far as half-caste and coons and all that. So, you've got to remember that. And the point I'm trying to make here is that the longer we continue to let that happen, as far as whether you're coloured or not, we're trying to educate young Australians to appreciate everybody from whatever country they come from. So to me, coloured does no good for Aboriginal Australians. And in the long run, if some of you people that want to represent you as being coloured, you go and live in some of the country towns, and you will find out what is really happening here. So to me, I'd prefer some other terminology if that's possible. So thanks very much.
Great. You know how good that was, that conversation? Oh, I mean, really, a very divisive topic which has just been discussed so respectfully amongst the people who hold different views, that, and I'm hoping that you're not anything other than interested in where that might go. Is that? Yes. Sorry.
Sorry, what was the question?
So I'm just wondering, I mean, it just seemed to me to be quite respectful the way that happened. Yeah. And because we're talking about you, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to have a last say.
I don't know, I just feel all right, hey.
Excellent. That's what I mean. Perfect. Couldn't be better. Okay, anybody else got any little thing in their heart? Lenine? We're getting really close to the end now, so if you've got something you need to say it before Lenine, because then we're going, led by Lily, we're going outside to do a closing.
Writing shocking, sister.
This is our...
That's why I put my glasses on. I still can't read it. Nah.
You know who you need to thank.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing.
Yeah, no, it's been a great 3 days. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. And I particularly want to thank the Kulin Nation and the country and Mother Earth, who we live, work, play, survive on. The most important person, or the most important entity, I should say, Earth jurisprudence, I say. We have to speak for her, she can't speak for herself. Uncle Larry and Auntie Caroline, it was great having the elders here to welcome us, and Uncle Larry for staying that extra day with us. Vicky Cousins, Uncle Bob and Auntie Robin, you're a wonderful role model and you keep us on our toes, and thanks for making us work. Peter, Uncle Leo and Nancy, all our great leaders that have been fighting the fight for the last 15 or so years with the, as part of the Australia Council, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Arts Board, and now the advisory panel, or a strategic panel, get it right, Lil. And all the First Nations mob and all the of you and Norman, Sarah, Feral Arts, and Anne, and woo! The future looks great.
And Lily Shearer.
Yeah. And Lanine Burke.
So when you get this job of being the housekeeper, which I think is, I've worked out what my official title should be, that you get these kind of lists all day about all the amazing people that we need to thank and the paranoia that we're going to forget someone. So if we've forgotten you, please come and see me and I'll buy you a beverage or put some cheese on a cracker and hand feed you, because seriously, this thing has taken literally, the first email I got had 87 people on the group already. I mean, literally, it has just taken the entire cohort of everyone that's here, plus all the people who are at home looking after our kids and our grandkids, all the people who we work with that's let us leave for a few days, all the people that are online. It has actually literally taken probably close to 1,000 of us to just get 220 of us in a room. So I'm going to do this real quick, echoing more. Yes?
Oh gosh, I can't forget Marinda Donnelly. Wow, 9-month-old baby and still pushing us all. It's great to have the elders and the young people on us middle-aged people's toes. I'm quite young still,
Yes, I also echo all of those acknowledgements and thank yous. And also that we're in the space at Footscray Community Arts Centre, and to also thank the staff, Lydia, Jade, Vanessa, the staff that have been at reception, Darren, Luke, and all of the technical team who've sat here and made sure that everything's kind of functioned. They've been an amazing host. We also want to thank all the people that have been on all the steering committee teleconferences across all of the groups. We want to thank Katie, the incredible caterer. So let's get Katie in and we'll do that again. To all of those people who have been writing, documenting, broadcasting and publishing this event online today, and that has, well, now she's left, so I'll come back to that in a minute, but that's included Elliot and all of the people who've been online. It's also included Scotia and Bong. Who else? I know Peter said it before, but seriously, Jasmine's feat to coordinate flights and accommodation, and now there's airport transfers and meeting and people's lives changing and people, I mean, seriously, extraordinary. Also to Peter, to Lily, to Anne Dunn. Sorry, I'm just going through my list here. To the people that have also just helped in the last few days, as well as in the last 9 months in the lead up to here, but some specific people, all of you that nominated a session, got to the space, did as we really encouraged you to do, which was hold the space, put the bit of paper up on a wall if you moved rooms, documented stuff. People literally spent, sometimes I saw people sitting outside for hours, you two, and your colleague, uploading information to make sure that we have incredibly accurate records and we do not have to go home and type up butcher's paper. Thank you. Also to Marinda, and I just also want to say a specific thank you to her, because pretty much between my child and her child, we turned into a child-minding situation with Sarah, particularly, and Norm at the Ferrell's house, kind of working this over the last couple of months. So to her, I say thank you as well. For all the volunteers who helped carry food up and down, pack up food, and including the incredible people who have been working at reception. I don't actually even know if they're all still here, but Robin, Caitlin and Josephine have just made sure that the smooth runnings of everything from registration right through to she literally appeared with a hot jug when I had a cup of tea. I didn't even know I was going to get a tea. I just got the cup and she was already filling it up with hot water. I mean, the kindness and care that those 3 people have taken with this delegation has been extraordinary. Yeah, I think we should do that. I also need to thank all of the support team that showed up at 8:15 to do the briefings over the last few days, including June and all of the people that sat around outside, the people that came in, flew in and arrived to speak on the various panels, and Ben for facilitating one of those. Also to Hannah, if you can hear me out there, and Harriet, who have actually kept 2 children alive in the last 3 days. I'm really appreciative to them. To anyone that I haven't mentioned, please let me know. Oh, Katie, you are awesome. Thank you so much. The food has seriously been amazing. And that grazing plate on the first night, I don't even know what was going on there. That was so good. Norm, you need to. I need to thank Jamie Lewis and David Pledger. Anyone else, Norm? Okay, there'll be more. Someone also asked me today.
If you need to be thanked.
Oh my God, imagine the horror. So Maria came up to me before and she said, listen, in our breakout group, we just really wanted to also say thank you to the funding body, the Australia Council, for supporting this, because actually what it meant, as we mentioned on the first day, was that a whole lot of people got here. And actually maybe that's framed the kind of complex conversations that we've been having, because to hear that 2 people hadn't seen each other in 16 years, I mean, that was just extraordinary, but to actually know that these opportunities are more available to more people when they get together. So thank you to the Australia Council. My last page says, I need to personally thank you for your generosity, for the online work, for the face-to-face work, for the people on the back deck, for the people on the phone, for the people facilitating, and all of you for participating. But I also personally really need to thank Sarah and Norm. Yeah. Oh, here they are. Oh, as she walks to the stage. Oh, she's coming to tell Norm. Woo! Sarah's also telling me the people that are doing all of the live captioning, those people are here, so thank you to the captioners.
And Veronica Pardo, thank you for your work. And the beautiful sign language people that were here yesterday as well, that was really important. It's really important that it's inclusive. And is that it? Oh, to the artist who presented yesterday. That was, thank you for your leadership and for holding that mantle, and for everyone being here. Can we go out and do the closing ceremony? No. Hey, I'm busting to just go out and do the closing ceremony now. So there's a piece of land up from the amphitheatre. If we can all congregate out there in a circle.